Ammo is crazy expensive and hard to find, and dry fire is life. I use the Mantis X10 to keep my handgun skills strong, and it makes dry practice fun and challenging. Check it out at the link below.
Hey everybody, Brian Hill with the Complete Combatant, Active Self-Protection Extra, and this is Mantis Dry Fire Mondays. And this is not particularly a Mantis drill, but it's something you can use on your holster draw analysis. I'm going to talk about hand positions. One of the viewers made a really good comment that I tend to prefer the cheater position over the fence or the hands up position. And they're right. I tend to demonstrate that more, and I hadn't realized it, so it was a good point. But this tends to be really polarizing. There's people choosing one side or the other, and they say that this is always the right way to go, or you should never use the other position. And let me tell you, once you do that, you stick yourself forever in that position. All right. Now, let's talk about, I've been a mixed martial arts coach. I've been a martial arts coach for nearly 4 decades, and I've taught a lot of fighters. And we see a lot of variation in guards. Some people tend to be very up and tight in hands. Some people tend to be a little far away. Some people tend to be a middle range, and even some people tend to be a low range. So if we're seeing that in fighting, that means there's a wide disparity of where the hands could be, and the hands tend to be fluid. Just like a baseball bat, we don't want to have a defensive bat. We always want our hands to be in motion because things in motion tend to stay in motion. It makes it much easier for a human being to react quickly if you're already moving the hands. So let's talk about the 2 positions that are polarizing everyone. Let's check the gun right here. Okay, tap rack train. And we're all good. Okay, so 2 positions are this. The cheater is the support hand grabs the shirt, the dominant hand covers the support hand, and we start from this position. This is really appendix only. There's no position for strong side like this. So this is only appendix guys we're talking to right here. So what happens is I move the shirt out of the way with this one, the other one goes and gets it, and I draw from this position. Now let's look at the side position of that also, okay? So this is kind of a low guard position, okay? Now the next one is the middle guard. I don't see a high guard in martial arts because we're not worrying about so much of getting, or in shooting, we're not worried about getting hit in the head. So it's more of a middle guard position. What happens is this hand goes to the belly button, the other hand goes and gets the gun, and we draw from right where we're at. Let's look at it from the side. Same thing here. Now, why the preference? Well, for me, the performance preference is the cheater's 1/10 of a second faster. And when we're talking about sub-second draws, that matters to me in a performance metric. But I do a lot of force-on-force training. It's been my whole life, and I don't even really think about where my hands go when I'm talking to somebody because I've gotten used to doing this and keeping my hands up and moving them. So the fence is more the position where if I have to interact with somebody, I'm going to use verbal de-escalation skills, and I'm going to be moving in hands and feet. My hands will start here, but they don't freeze. The whole artificiality of shooting is very difficult for fighters, either just standing still and holding still, waiting for a timer, or this standing still. These simply don't exist in the contextual environment of personal protection. Now, if you're doing competitive shooting, the competition tells you where your hands go anyway, so you don't have any choices. They're very clear, and it's clearly defined, okay? And the idea that we may start with our hands at our side is probably one of the worst positions we could start from, because we can't interfere, we can't talk, we're really putting ourselves at a huge disadvantage, okay? And in the surrender position is not something we want to be in anyway. When you talk to martial arts guys, even here, you know, the guys that do a lot of blade work, they tend to do the back of the hands. Guys that are empty hand tend to do in the middle. You know, people that are really big on the de-escalation skill and communication skills tend to be palms out. The reason for that is we always want to show that our hands are empty and we're not a threat at this position, but it's also a ready position that allows us to cover our head and be ready to counterattack. So what's that got to do with shooting? If I have to manage somebody, I'm going to be in hands up. If nothing's going on, I'm not going to walk around with my hands up. They're simply going to be in a more natural position. Let's think about 2 things that may be happening, okay? Guy approaches me, I have to use verbal skills. No, sir, I'm sorry, I don't. Get away from me. Don't move! My hands will be moving the whole time from that, and in that positions where I'll go and get the gun, okay? From that draw position where my hands are. But if nothing's going on and suddenly something happens, all right, so say that you're at a convenience store and a robbery starts or something like that. I'm not going to pivot, put my hands up, and then draw from there, all right? Wherever my hands are right now is where the draw is going to start, and off I go. So it's not an always or a never situation for the personal protection expert. for you defending yourself. Sometimes you have your hands up, sometimes you have your hands down, and they're fluid. But let's add 2 more hand positions, because let's confuse this even further and get further away from always and never, okay? What if you have something in your left hand? What tends to happen? Well, whatever's in the support hand tends to stay in the support hand for people while they're shooting. We see this over and over again in force on force classes, and we see it a lot in John's videos. Coffee cups, notepads, pens, telephones, they stay in the hand. So I would suggest you start practicing, whichever age group you are, if you talk on the phone or you text, of getting rid of this thing and practicing your draw so that you could be good at that too. Okay? You need to teach the support hand to drop what it's doing. And then the final hand position is also, what if the left hand's involved? All right, there's several reasons it could be involved. It could be moving somebody out of the way. It could be injured. It could be holding a flashlight. You're just not going to be able to use this for the draw. So we want to practice drawing with our primary hand only, okay, and getting good at that. I've done videos on that, how to do these things, so it's something you could go back and look at. So I won't get into the depth of detail, but those are 4 positions that we see quite frequently in active self-protection videos. So therefore, I practice all 4. And then let's think about life. Maybe my hands are just simply flowing from one hand position to the next. Something may have changed, and I may not be able to use my left hand, so I have to go back to the right hand only primary draw, or primary for you left-handers, you left hand only. So I'm going to be moving through these positions. So remember, this is artificial, but we're trying to find a place for us to perform our metrics at the highest level. It's important. Those of you that are working on a sub-second draw, it's important because you're building a reservoir of skill. And that means when you fumble your draw and add 0.2 to it, and then you need to visually verify your sights and you add another 0.2 to it, you have the time to do all that. If you don't develop this reservoir of skill, you're only going to be able to do what you can do. So I don't expect in competition nor in self-defense to have a sub-second draw. Although it may be available to me, I expect other things to interfere, so I'm making a reservoir. Same thing with my hand positions. I just don't know where my hands might be and how they might be moving, how my feet might be moving, but I want to get in the habit of being able to do these things while I talk and while I move my hands, so that it doesn't take up a stack in my mind. It doesn't take away from the processing power of being able to make a good decision of whether I need to use force in this situation, and if I do need to use force, being able to see the sights and press the trigger correctly. I hope that helps you guys. It's not really an answer, but I promise you, the viewers, that I will do this. I will demonstrate from the cheater position and from the hands up or the fence position equally from now on. And I think that'll help me as a shooter, so I appreciate the comment. But I'm not gonna pick one or the other either. It's not my personality because life is fluid, it's changing. I tell my class this, and people don't like to hear this. You can be right and you can be certain, but very seldom can you be both at the same time, okay? As you develop and change, you will change your mind about some of this. Remember that. You won't be the same person you were in 5 years from now if you keep training. So we're going to be fluid. So I may not be certain. I may be right that this is good enough for me right now, and that's the answer, good enough, not perfect. But in the future, I may change that, all right? What I am truly certain of is that you have to practice this by modeling it, and active self-protection videos are great for that. Then use the Mantis holster draw analysis with the different hand positions and see what each position cost you in time. And that way you could make good decisions if you ever have to defend yourself. All right, I'm Brian Hill with the Complete Combatant. Remember, subscribe, hit the like button, leave me a comment. You guys have been wonderful. It's always a pleasure. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to work with you guys and to suggest questions to you that may further your training. And listen, this makes dry practice more interesting. Instead of just standing there and drawing, you're doing something that can interest you and make it a little more difficult. And we always want to struggle a little bit in our training because that's what makes it rich. That's what makes us better. All right, as always, measure, refine, and perform.